NFL Network, over a decade in the league, here to chop it up with us. From the depths of the NFL film rooms, I shall add, good morning, Baldy. How are you today, brother?
Hey, Rick, it's good to be with you, buddy. I'm doing great. You kidding me?
I know. It doesn't get better than
the
this.
eve of, one of these great weekends in America, man.
I'll tell you, man, the Turnpike trilogy. Here we are.
That's right. Yes. I mean, there's been so many classic games, just classic games played up and down this Turnpike between these two teams. I played in some myself, but, going back to Herm Edwards and, it's just so many, Brian Westbrook and Deshaun, Jackson, and just so many classic games over the years.
Yeah, and it's funny because, during the regular season, you get by with the Jimmies and Joes. When you get to the postseason, it's more about the X's and O's, and you've got two incredible coaching staffs. And I hate to say it to the Eagles fans, but Brian Daboll has something Nick Sirianni doesn't, which is a playoff win.
Yeah.
And we saw Wink Martindale, man. This guy pulls out all the punches. Matter of fact, the Giants, both on offense and defense, kind of have changed their identity. I wanted to get your perspective, though, just on what a wonderful job both of these staffs have done. But how do you kind of pinpoint what we're going to see from the G-men? I mean, Wink laid off the blitz. He disguised the pre-snap coverage.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm going to see this Saturday night.
I don't know either, but I've known Wink a long time. So I'll tell you, Rick, I was up there at training camp at least twice this year, maybe 3 times. And I remember one day I'm driving up the Turnpike from my place in South Jersey, and I text Wink. I go, what am I going to see today? He goes, he goes, be honest with you, coach will only let me blitz 3 times each period. That's it. He goes, so I go up there and I go, one day it was just going to be all free hitters to the quarterback. He was just trying to, break down protections like he can do. And it was the worst practice I've seen any offense all year long. I mean, they couldn't function at all, Rick. Like they couldn't even, they couldn't complete a pass. It was horrible. And I thought, oh man, like Dable could be a good coach, and he was really good with us after the, practice and all this stuff. And all these guys that were supposed to practice weren't practicing. And I was like, man, this is like, they look like the same old Giants to me, Rick. And then you see them, win these games late, early in the year and start piling up some wins and, beating Green Bay and, all these games that they won over in London. And I go, wow. And then you look at them now and you go, okay, Isaiah Hodgins wasn't on the roster to start the season. Richie James wasn't on the roster. And you look at how Daniel Jones is throwing it. And you look at the additions of Glowinski and Feliciano. And then you look at the defense, with Xavier McKinney now back from that hand. And you see Adoree Jackson back. And, you see the development of Kayvon and Ojulari. And you just, all of a sudden you go, Wink's got chess pieces, Rick. Like, he could do a lot of things right now. And if you give him chess pieces, and, I got to say that the best defense lineman I saw in Super Wildcard Weekend was Dexter Lawrence. Like, he was unstoppable. And you go, okay, I know what the Eagles' scores were, and I know, how they competed, whatever, week 14, week 18. None of that matters. This is going to be a good game, a really good game. And to your point, I really think the matchup between Wink on one side and Shane Steichen / Nick Sirianni on the other side is going to be a real clash of the Titans. Like, that's going to be special, that matchup.
Well, and I was going to say, because you mentioned the mismatch. I mean, Jason Kelsey's no Garrett Bradbury now. I was going to say, because Kelsey's responsible for a lot of the pre-snap coverage, I was going to say the chess match between Wink and Kelsey, because I saw last week Wink was showing kind of cover 1, cover 0 pre-snap, then dropping back into cover 3, and Kelsey's going to have to kind of combat that, right? And I also saw up until week 16, the Giants were blitzing 44 to 50% of the time.
Most in the league.
Since week 16, only 15% of the time. So what are we going to see tomorrow night, do you think?
Well, it's interesting you bring up Kelsey, because I actually had texted Wink about something else that the Eagles do. And he went out of his way to say there's no better center in football than Kelsey when it comes time to looking at your protections and making the adjustments at the line of scrimmage. He said he's got as much respect for him doing that as anybody that he's competed against. And he knows he's got to go up against a guy that is not going to, A, is going to communicate to everybody on the line, and B, get them into the right protections. And so he knows that, it's not just Jalen, it's just not the coaches, they got to compete with Kelsey. But to your point and to your question, Rick, I really don't know. I don't know what we're going to see. Week 18, he blitzed. He had a lot of free hitters at Jalen Hurts, but he also knew that Jalen was probably going to try to protect himself, which he did. He's coming off the shoulder, injury, and he just figured that he'd be out there. He wanted to get some rust off, but he's not going to be Jalen Hurts running for 700 yards like he did during the year. So I think he knew that. So he got the ball out of Jalen's hands a couple times. He didn't have any really long runs. So, but we're going to see a different Jalen Hurts this week, and and then his ability to throw the deep ball. We'll find out just how impacted that shoulder is and how he throws the deep ball.
Yeah, and I would say that Kelce is the ultimate definition of hard work beats talent, right? Because go back week 14, Sexy Dexy, he's got 50-pound mismatch, height,
at least,
weight, right? And you see the technique, the athleticism, and just the understanding of angles. And you played offensive line for a decade in the league. Let me ask you this, because I know the chat room has been hounding me to ask you your take on the Eagles' offensive alignment up front. Now, we know Lane Johnson's going to give it a go. We know he's tough as nails. How long he goes, if he makes it through, remains to be seen. You and I were chatting a little bit off the air. I know you're pretty confident. Well, I think you prefer the Jack Driscoll at right tackle rather than moving two guys.
Yeah.
But I'll let you explain it as to why.
Well, I mean, so I have, I'm in touch with Lane and his people, and like Lane feels pretty good, and he's going to go. He's been practicing. I told him I have had that surgery before that, Dr. Bill Myers does on every athlete in the world when they tear the lower abdomen muscle, and it's a tear. It's a real. He's going to need surgery. He's been rehabbing. He's been resting. He says his body feels fantastic, so he's going to go. I don't know how long he's going to go, Rick. I mean, honestly, I tried. Like I couldn't go. As soon as you try to make an explosive movement, like it's not a question of pain. It's just a question of your body just gives out. Just the way it did when he got hurt. His body just gave out. And so if that happens, I prefer Jack Driscoll in there. I know Jack, he got a lot bigger and stronger this year. I think he's a lot more confident. I think Jeff Stoutland really likes him. I think he likes his intelligence. He's really smart, Rick. He doesn't miss assignments. He's played guard. He's played tackle. He's played left side. He's played right side. I just think, if you start thinking about moving Malata to right tackle, I just think it's too much. He's played right tackle, obviously. But I think, him, and you got to think about the left guard as well. When you change the left tackle, now you're asking, Landon Dickerson to play next to a guy that he hadn't played with before, for the most part. So I think you're changing too many positions to fix one. That's kind of my take. And I feel like Stout's always liked Driscoll. Like he liked his intelligence. He liked his toughness. I was around him a lot this offseason. He really trained hard. He is bigger and stronger. Look, there's nobody else like Lane Johnson out there. I mean, nobody's going to say that, he's going to shut down Ojulari or Kayvon or whatever. But I feel like, whatever Wink dials up, blitz-wise, pressure-wise, pre-snap look-wise, I feel like the communication with Sam Malo, with Kelce, can be really effective with Driscoll out there at right tackle.
No, good points. We're talking to Brian Baldinger, NFL Network, of course, over a decade in the league, playing in this NFC East. It's amazing. The road to Glendale runs through the NFC East. 3 teams here in the divisional playoff matchup, Baldy. Let's switch it up. This game will be won in the trenches, I believe. This Eagles defensive line, I mean, 70 sacks, Haason Reddick, Josh Sweat is back, Brandon Graham, double-digit sacks. Oh, by the way, Robert Quinn off of the edge. I did not even mention the interior. I'll get to that in a second. But talk about not only the importance of setting the edge against the pass, but also setting the edge against the run with this Giants team. And, again, on the offense, Daniel Jones, I don't know. Week 14, he ran the ball 4 times. Last week against the Vikings, 17 times. Do you spy him? How do you account for Daniel Jones who's playing? To me, it's not really about the improvement he's made as a passer, Baldy, as it is about this guy was committing double-digit lost fumbles. He didn't even commit. They're second in the league in turnovers. Daniel Jones only threw 5 interceptions. He only lost 3 fumbles. Those are huge, huge strides of improvement. And he's got, I mean, I could rattle off stats. You think he's the second coming of Johnny U. I mean, 72% completion percentage over the last 5 weeks. It's higher than Mahomes, Herbert, Burrow, whoever you want to throw out there. And then this is where it gets dangerous. For the overall season, 75% completion percentage off of play action, second best in the league. I think we're going to see a lot of that.
Well, I mean, 2 of those games are against Minnesota, and Minnesota's horrible. I mean, they went after Patrick Peterson in both games. With the Giants went up there, and they're hurting at corner. Anybody they put out there was, and then the pass rush wasn't anything like what they're going to see from Philadelphia. So it's going to be different. But they certainly know the history of Daniel Jones, and anybody that's watched Haason Reddick over the last 3 years, I mean, he's a forced fumble machine. It's more than 16 sacks. I mean, that guy is concentrating on getting the ball out of your hands. Brandon Graham basically iced a Super Bowl 5 years ago, rushing from over the guard to get the ball out of, Tom Brady's hands to seal the deal. These guys are, very, very good at doing it. Josh Sweat turns a corner about as well as anybody in this business. So they are really good up front. They don't have to blitz. They will on a rare occasion, but they really don't have to. They're going to play, Darius Slay is all he wants to do is press man. And, if you put him on, say, Isaiah Hodgins, who's having a really good second half of the season, you would go, okay, there's a guy that can shut Hodgins down. He's a good route runner. He's not a long speed guy. We know what he was coming out of Oregon State. But he's really, to your point about Daniel Jones, I mean, practice makes a difference, Rick. And a lot of times, when they had Holiday and all these guys, they weren't practicing at all. It makes a difference. Like, Isaiah's out there every day. Slayton's out there every day. He's more than just a go ball guy now. He's running the route tree. Richie James is a pure slot. Bellinger's healthy from that eye socket injury. You can do anything you want with Saquon. You can line him up as a receiver. You can screen him. You can check down to him. And he's just a great receiver. So he's got options. He's got real options right now. And if you don't account for him, like Minnesota didn't on basically the first play of the game, he's going to take off with it. He's an excellent runner. He makes people miss. He really doesn't slide much. I think he should, but he's an excellent runner. He was coming out of Duke, he was coming out of high school in Charlotte. He's a very good athlete. So they've got weapons, Rick. It's a really good offense. And the Eagles, I know the Cowboys were good, week 17. I don't know that they've seen an offense like this beside the Cowboys in the last 5 weeks.
I saw Michael Robinson kind of chuckle at you last week too, and you held firm because he said, "What are you talking about? This is Richie James, this is Isaiah Hodge, like this is a no-name offense." But I mean, the chemistry is real.
Chemistry is real.
Yeah, and
what you at this time of the year, sometimes it takes a whole year to get here, Rick. It did for the Giants. They were winning with Daniel Jones and Saquon for the first half of the season, and plays at the end of the game on defense. But sometimes, like, the chemistry you're talking about is real. Like, everybody has a defined role. I mean, we could get to the Jacksonville game, and you look at Christian Kirk, it's the same thing. Richie James knows his role. Slayton knows his role. Hodgins knows his role. Like, they've got defined roles, and you could just see walkthroughs, practice, meetings. Like, everybody knows what's going on. Like, nobody doesn't know the check. Nobody doesn't know where we're going to here on a kill situation, like the Chargers didn't know on a 3rd and 1 last week. So that's Stable's job to make sure everybody, finds a role, and they've established this. And it's all been over the course of a season. And, it's really important, that you get there. And there is no question marks about what somebody's role is in this formation. They're a big 11 personnel team, all this. Like, I felt like all the guys that were in the Giants for the last 10 years, like, nobody knew how to do that. And they never got there, where this is who we are. This is who Richie James is. You could debate Richie James as a slot receiver, but on that team right now, he's about as valuable as anybody.
Yeah, I think Richie James in the slot could do some work. But let me get back to the defensive line. I gotta say, I don't recall a defensive line with the depth. Like, the Giants had the NASCAR back when they were winning rings, and they were pretty good with their starters. But you talk about the depth, and since they've added Linville, Joseph, and Sue in the middle there to go along with Jordan Davis, Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrove. Oh, by the way, Milton Williams is playing at a pretty good level too. Let me ask you, though, about these odd man fronts, because I saw something where the point was made where with the odd man fronts or the 5-man front, Saquon Barkley may have to stay in and account for that a little bit more and not go out as a pass catcher as much. He carved up the Vikings more, I thought, on the passing game than the running game last week. Any do you believe in that, or what's your take there?
Well, the Eagles are a big 5-man front. Anybody that's going to try to run the ball, they're lining up in a bare front, and you're going to have to count for Josh Sweat and Haason Reddick on the outside. So if you throw out of that, Rick, to your point, are you just going to leave Evan Neal one-on-one with Haason Reddick? Like, I mean, I'd be a little afraid of that matchup if you're holding the ball. I'd be a little afraid inside Nick Gates against Javon Hargrave. Like those matchups. Like I like Andrew Thomas to be able to handle Josh Sweat or Haason if he goes to that side, because I think he's really about as close to elite as you can get. He's right there at the top of the left tackles. But there's some of those matchups inside. Like I've watched Javon Hargrave just ruin everybody, over the last 2 years in Philadelphia. But do they have as much depth as anybody? That's Howie Roseman. That's how he builds his team. And when they brought in, I don't think Ndamukong Suh has made much of a difference, or Robert Quinn. They might in the postseason, But I feel like, inside,
Joseph.
Linval's made a big difference. Like he's a natural nose tackle. I thought from day one when they signed him that he improved that whole position. You don't want Fletcher on there. You don't want to necessarily put Javon on that position, although he's capable of doing it. But I think, Linval was perfect for that position.
All right, Baldy. Quickly here, your assessment. I have not had a chance to interact with Denard Wilson. He's been kind of mentioned as the next logical choice as defensive coordinator if Jonathan Gannon departs. I saw him, though, the other day break down some film. He looks like he's very detail-orientated, and he sounds like he's ready for the job. Any thoughts there? Well,
I think, Nick Sirianni thinks about everything, and you have to as a head coach. I mean, your team is your team, but you always have to think about the future. You have to think about if you're going to lose players, and coaches. And so, I always said, playing for Tom Landry, that it's harder to replace good coaches than it is good players. And, Sean McVay's feeling that effect in Los Angeles, losing the number of coaches he's lost. And so I think Nick has got a succession plan in place. And if he would lose Jonathan Gannon, he interviewed last year, and so he's, interviewed already in a couple places this year. So it's a real possibility they could lose him. If you talk to Jonathan Gannon, you can just tell, the guy's really smart. Like he knows what's going on. If I'm at practice, he always comes up to me, picks my brain about things. He's just alert, and he knows who's who. He knows the bigger picture.
He knows how to read a room. I can tell you that.
What's that?
He knows how to read a room.
He's just, you're looking for guys that can stand up in front of that room, and really, sell a vision. I think Nick is a natural coach, but Nick is also thinking about, if he loses Shane Steichen, if he loses Jonathan Gannon, what's going to happen. And so, so I think he's got a plan in place.
Yeah, and one could argue the continuity of having those guys both back for a second consecutive season is why they got that number 1 seed. I see a question about the free agency. We'll talk about that in the offseason, guys. We only have Baldy for so long. So let me get you a prediction from the Eagles, Giants. Ocean Casino Resorts has it at about a touchdown. Is it going to be closer? Is it going to be a blowout?
I feel like a touchdown. I feel like this game's going into the fourth quarter, Rick. I feel like the Giants are playing at their very best. We haven't seen the Eagles at their best since they opened up against Chicago 5 weeks ago when they were fully healthy. Lane was at right tackle and Jalen was healthy. And then in the third quarter, Gibson, knocks, Jalen to the turf and that shoulder. Who knows just how bad it ever was. I think it was pretty bad. And so, we're going to see, can the Eagles get back to, just the way they were the week before, putting up 48 points and 4th and 7, throwing a bomb to Devontae Smith for a touchdown to open the game up. I want to see if the Eagles can get back there. I don't have doubts that they can, but they have to do it. And so can they just go out there and play at the level that we've seen? But I know the Giants are coming in confident. I know they'll come in loose. And I think they're going to give the Eagles the best shot. I think this thing goes in the fourth quarter, but I could see, 30-23 type game between these two teams.
Yeah, not quite exactly the January weather. It's all nice and sunny. I looked out the window today. I think it's going to be 40 and sunny on tomorrow night. But let me ask you this, because I do have to get to a break in another minute here, Baldy. But everybody seems to be going with the chalk this weekend. To me, I think the Bengals are the one team, and I know their offensive line is banged up, and we saw that last year. But to me, that's the upset I see possibly happen. Am I right there, or is it somewhere else?
I think Cincinnati's going to go in and win. I mean, I think that, when you look at, whether it's Kaiir Elam or Tre'Davious White, whoever's at corner, like, I think, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, I think you favor those guys. I know, Jackson Carman's playing left tackle, but his sets look fine to me. I think, he needs to work with Volson on some combo blocks and twist stunts and things that you're going to see. But I thought he sets real well out there. I mean, I don't know if he's Jonah Williams or anything, but the way that Joe plays the game, he's going to get sacked. He'll get hit. But Buffalo's his own team. I feel like his receivers, I would favor those guys in their matchups against those corners. I like Cincinnati to go in and actually win the game. And look, we've seen a lot of bad football this year, Rick. I'm going to get out of here in a second. Yep. But the worst team in the league at turning the ball over is Buffalo. It's who they are. I mean, I just don't think it might stop, but not the way that they play. They play aggressively. They attack, the quarterback attacks, and it leads to some mistakes.
I agree wholeheartedly. Always appreciate the time, Baldy. I saw your last text, by the way. Glad to hear it. I'm sure we'll be chatting soon.
Yeah.
Get back to the film room, brother. We're looking forward to it over there on the NFL Network. Keep it cranking.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate you having me, man. Have a great week. Enjoy the games.
You too, Baldy. That's Brian Baldinger, NFL Network. The best in the business, as far as I'm concerned, to get our Football Friday affair jump-started. The Turnpike Trilogy. Oh, baby. What's it say? 30 hours away. Are you crazy? Smash that like button. We're going to pay some bills when we come back. We've got Mike Gill, the People's Champion, 97.3 ESPN, the Sports Bash, will join us right